Alrighty, everybody. Welcome to Living Free in Tennessee. We are going to go live today. I'm totally in my PJs. You're getting PJ Nicole. Because sometimes we don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Now, I know a lot of people would not go out without their makeup, without their hair nicely brushed, all of that. But today I decided not to let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Thank you for your understanding yesterday about the Homestead Happenings update not happening at 9:30. There was some stuff that happened. We'll talk about that in the show. Do me a favor. Actually, I think I'll share this so people know we're live, because nobody believes I'm going live ever again, as long as I live, because it's been such a crazy 2 days for Nicole Sauce. But if you're just getting into the live, let folks know that we're live. I'll throw it out here on Telegram and let folks know that we're going to record the podcast live. See, I'm just going to type live now. Boom. Let folks know on MeWe, Telegram, Facebook, all that stuff. I would have usually gone and sung it to the skies, but I am in the process of not letting the perfect be the enemy of the good. So, hi, Tori. Good morning. We're going to record the Friday podcast today on Saturday. And I'm just going to admit it's Saturday when I record the podcast, and we're going to talk about the homestead. And then we will go from there. And I'm going to explain in the podcast about the soy poisoning I got in Georgia. Has nothing to do with the conference that I was at. So I want to make sure that's clear. But it does have to do with something about trusting what people tell you who work in restaurants and at hotels. So we'll go into that story a little bit today. So what we're going to do from here, I'm going to give a pause, 5-second pause, and then we're going to record the podcast. You ready to go? Welcome to Living Free in Tennessee, where we talk about building the life you choose on your terms. Today is Saturday, February 25th, 2023, and this is episode 703 of Living Free in Tennessee, and it is a Friday Homestead Happenings update. What in the world happened, though? I was all set to go live from the Next Steps conference for the Homestead Happenings, and unfortunately, I ordered food from their restaurant at the hotel, asked them if there was soy in the food. They said no, and here's what I ordered. 3 hamburger patties. Yeah, you're not hearing anything else. Like hamburger patties, nothing else, flame broiled, should not have soy in them unless there's soy in them, or they use soy oil in the kitchen, or they use generic vegetable oil. So I asked them if there was soy. They're like, no. They served them to me. I ate them, and I have been sicker than I've ever been with soy in my life before this incident. It was bad. It's still bad. In fact, if I get up and walk out in the middle of this live stream, I'll be back in a minute. Don't ask me why or what's going on. Just, accept that Nicole Sauce has disappeared off of the screen for a second, because you don't want to see that. Nobody wants to see that, is what it is, right? So that's been kind of difficult. And a lot of people don't believe people when they say they have allergies. I always believe people when they say they have allergies, even if I can't accommodate their allergy. I will do my best not to give people things. So one big thing about allergies, if you have them, I think it's a self-responsibility issue. So I travel with dehydrated meals and other things I can eat, just in case. And I have found places I can go to eat along, when I'm out of town, if I want to go out to eat, and it's fine. And I just I haven't had this level of poisoning since I went to visit Jack Spirko in 2019, ate black colored rice at the Mexican place, and it was made black by bean juice, which also it's not just a soy allergy, it's an allergy to pretty much all legumes. And I was sick for 6 weeks after that one. I'm hoping this one doesn't last that long. The acuteness is still there. The acuteness was more acute yesterday, and I had a 5-hour drive home, which took me about 8 hours to do. And it's just, I actually ended up leaving the conference earlier than I would have, because I knew it was going to take me so long to get home, and I really didn't want to spend another night in a hotel on the way home. So I visited lots of people along the way. It was kind of a funny little adventure. And, The thing is, when you have an allergy, you need to take responsibility for it. And I just sort of forgot the primary directive of when you ask hotel staff if something has your allergen in it. There's two things you can do to have better chances of a successful answer. One, if they instantly say no without checking with the kitchen, they don't know. They don't know. And that happened to me. Two, if you don't mention it's an allergy, sometimes they don't take you seriously and they just think you're a hysterical person. So I suspect both those things happened, and I have not been exposed to soy in a long time. And I will say this, my allergy to soy, I think, is probably a glyphosate allergy because they use it to harvest soy with. But I don't know. I've never been tested. I just know if I have soy or beans or lentils or split peas or any like garbanzo beans, I can't have hummus. If I have any of that stuff, it makes me sick. But if I grow pinto beans or black beans or scarlet runner beans and I harvest them and I cook them, they do not make me sick. So my quote unquote allergy is not, I have a feeling it's not an allergy to those items. I have a feeling it's an allergy to chemicals in those items. But I'll tell you what, it takes me on a bit of a wild ride for sure. In the community section, I will talk about what the community is doing to help me right now with this. But that is why today's show is being recorded on Saturday and not Friday, because I didn't think I could do the show justice. And I didn't want to have to get up 6 times in the middle of the show. This time we might only have 1 interruption. We'll see. So I am doing okay. I will recover. I am consuming every ferment I can find. I literally, on the way home, I stopped by this new farm stand store in Sparta that I thought might have ferments. And I'm like, do you have ferments? They're like, no. And I was like, well, dang, because you were on my way home and now I got to go to Woodbury to get them, which is where I usually get them. But I have some ferments at home, but I'm getting kvass, which is fermented beet juice, which is a really good gut reset when you have problems like I'm having here. So that happened. Anyway, today we're going to talk about springing forth, community connections, and a choice I made to take a capital loss on an investment this year and why. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that in the finance section. Before we jump into that, I want to talk about our featured event of the week. And that is, so those of you in the Tennessee area know that Knoxville has a bunch of people doing a bunch of really cool things. And we don't talk about them a lot. I haven't been out there to any of the Freedom Cell events. I don't know that I'm invited to the Freedom Cell events over there anymore. But they have a really great group. And Kerry Brown, who is from Strong Roots Resources, he has decided on every quarter on his farm to have a swap meet for anybody who wants to come from the region. If you want to drive across the state, we've been talking about getting a caravan from Tennessee to go out there. And this quarter's meetup is March 5th. I believe it starts 10 or so in the morning. You can bring things to trade or sell. I think they usually serve some beverages of the non-alcoholic variety. You can bring something to share, whatever you want to do. More information is strongrootsresources at gmail.com. I've put that email in the show notes. But definitely, if you think you're going to go, RSVP to Kerry so he knows you're coming. That's how they plan for folks. I have wanted to go to the last 2. I'm missing this one too because it's during my choir's concert. So I'll be singing classically that day. That's my last concert until next fall. And I guess I'm probably required to be on stage there. Next up, I want to thank today's sponsor of the day, Brave Botanicals. This is a company run by John Bush. And you know what's interesting about this company is John knew he wanted to create prosperity in his life and prosperity for people around him for many, many years. And he believes in counter economics. He believes in standing up for what's right. He was a freedom activist before he realized, yes, I am willing to go to jail for my beliefs. No, I don't want to just frivolously go to jail and not be there for my kids. And so once he had kids, he started adjusting how he attacked the freedom problem. And part of how he attacks that is by helping those around him develop prosperity in their lives, as well as developing prosperity in his own life. And I was actually just at an event where we were talking about how there seems to be this idea that if you're going to fight for freedom and help other people, you have to be poor. John won't be poor. John believes in prosperity. And the first time he broke through mentally his own poverty mindset from what I've observed from the outside, he may have a different opinion on this, was when he started Brave Botanicals, where he packaged together kratom, something that he was already using to better his life. So if you go to bravebotanicals.com, you will find quality CBD and kratom products, and that's all over there. If you want to try kratom for the first time, just go to freeounceofkratom.com and get your free ounce of kratom. I think it's $5 shipping and handling to do that, as well as you get a really cool set of coupon codes if you want to try some additional products. And Tori says, how did I not know that Brave Botanicals is John Bush? It is. So when he started Brave Botanicals, the first thing that happened is the big banking processing systems cut him off. So he can't use PayPal or any of those other things. If you're going to send John Bush money, you have two ways to do it. One, cryptocurrency. Two, an e-check from your bank. But it is John Bush. He has a money-back guarantee on a lot of things that he does. I don't know exactly how that works at Brave Botanicals, but I do know that I think some of the barrier to sales that he has to overcome are much stronger than like what I have to at my coffee company, because big banks don't like CBD and they do not like kratom. So guys, this is sort of a foreshadowing of what our future looks like. More and more and more, the financial system is being weaponized on the choices we make for things that are perfectly legal. They say we're not going to process your cards anymore. And most online vendors and most people who accept money for things accept credit cards. And that whole system is predicated on you being allowed to do transactions. I have had more than one customer cut off either because of what they're selling being sharp knives or gun related or CBD or herbal, like herbal, not just herbal CBD and kratom, but herbal as in I'll ship you some calendula and I think this is how it's healing, right? They've been cut off for that because that's not the message that the mainstream wants out there. So anyway, I'm saying that. So if you go to bravebotanicals.com or go to freeounceofkratom.com, be prepared to use that e-check or cryptocurrency to do your transaction. And I really appreciate John Bush supporting my show. He was one of the first people to reach out to me when he heard that Living Free in Tennessee was accepting sponsors. And I thought about it for a long time because he also sells products that produce like Delta 8 that produce more of a high feeling, I guess. I don't know. I haven't used it. And I know most of my target is like most of you listeners are not sort of into that aspect of things. And as I've talked to him, I said, I think the healing aspects of your other products are probably more of interest to my audience than if it's a Delta 8 experience. But I don't know. He covers it all because he doesn't think anything should be illegal, but everything he is selling is legal. So anyway, that's all of the things. You know what? There are different regulations in different states. They're legal in his state for what he's doing. And I really think if you're going to use these products, why not choose somebody who also supports the show? That's over at bravebotanicals.com. Finally, if you want to send questions or feedback, you can do that via email. It's the best way. Some of you text me, and I do answer texts, but I don't always remember to follow up on texts. I do follow up on emails, though. That's Nicole at livingfreeintennessee.com, or go to livingfreeintennessee.com, click on contact, fill out the form, and those emails go to me. Next up, we have our first segment, Featured Forage. This is where we talk about what's coming out on the land around us. And I'm really, so as I explained what we're going to talk about today, I was like, hey, early spring, like it's 100% early springtime here. That does not mean another crazy deep freeze couldn't happen. It can, like well into March, we've had this happen. Right now, though, the next 2 weeks look pretty deep freeze free. And the plants are telling me it's time to wake up. If we get a deep freeze, some of those plants will die. But that's what it is to live in Tennessee. I got dandelion flowers coming out. I've got dead nettle all over the place. Elderberries are starting to put on the new leaves. I haven't seen poke up, but I bet poke is coming next. I have not found chickweed yet, but I'm sure chickweed is out there. So all of that is happening right now. And then the green onions and wild garlic are prolific at this point. So that's all out there. I haven't found wild lettuce, but Carrie, who's on here, can tell us if his wild lettuce patch is doing well. I don't know. My watercress patch, it's there. I haven't harvested from it. We've had so many major rain events that it's a little bit washed out. So what happens when we get major rain events is it drains into the creek where the watercress grows. Some of it blows downstream and establishes itself somewhere else. And then it takes a week or so for the stuff that's left behind to grow back and be robust. But I'm expecting to have some nice watercress salads soon. So that's what's going on around us in the forage area. The next thing to talk about is livestock. As early spring comes, there's more early spring forage for the sheep in the pastures. And I know we went into this winter having no idea how much hay to have on hand to supplement the sheep's food through the winter. And so I calculated based on what Dawn Sutton told me, who we bought the sheep from. They go through in Ohio. And I counted like this many sheep eat that much hay in a week times the number of weeks I think we won't really be growing forage. And I came up with a number of bales of Timothy hay to have on hand, doubled that number, and that's how much we have stored for the winter. And that was good because when it was super, super cold, they were eating a lot more over Christmas. And when and we are not going to be worrying about, do we have enough hay for our sheep? So that I was super happy with that. And I'm very happy to have a high quality Timothy hay source here who we can tap into year after year after year, because that really helps me know I can keep these animals in the hay that they need over time. I'm not dependent on like a Tractor Supply or a farmer's co-op. Not that you don't want to, not that stores are bad with things, but the problem is when shortages hit nationally of things, it does impact the national supplier's ability to supply. And you get higher tax, like higher purchasing from those sources. They may be getting a little less than they usually get. And then because people's local sources have dried up. So I like to keep a lot of local sources on hand and then have an idea of who regionally we can tap into as a backup plan. And of course, if I ever have to buy from Tractor Supply or Farmers Co-op, I do buy things from them. I just don't depend on them because I don't trust that their just-in-time fulfillment approach is going to work. Plus, they're way more expensive than just buying from the guy that's producing the Timothy hay. And so I might as well give him, I think he probably keeps more in his pocket if he's not selling to Tractor Supply, and I get a better quality product over time. We have a relationship, and that's kind of something that the natural progression of how industry works is over time, things consolidate, they can leverage their size to get better wholesale deals, bring some of the prices down, find efficiencies, like all of that happens. And what can happen when we all choose to go the easy route to the bigger stores is that some of the smaller providers get pushed out of the market. But if those smaller providers keep their relationship selling up, produce a better quality product, can justify why the price is different. And I would say why the price is different in many cases is the quality is higher, then they continue to exist too. When we do businesses with the smaller providers and with each other, that keeps us all going. That keeps them going. That keeps us all going. And that commerce relationship is a real relationship. So we are exchanging money value for an item that we need. And that is a trusting relationship. I give you money for something that I trust you will give back to me, that I trust is the quality you tell me it is. Okay. And a lot of people have kind of subtracted the relationship in their heads from a commerce transaction, but it is a communication, it is exchange of energy, and it is a very important foundation for trust. When you buy things from the same brand over and over and over, you are indicating that you trust that entity. Well, what has happened, I think, as things have gone through their latest round of consolidation, is that the expectation of trust has been removed from a commerce relationship. Like the relationship part has been removed from it. Now, I know these larger corporations are trying to establish a relationship and keep the relationship, but at the end of the day, you are part of their statistics. You're part of their statistics. And if they identify that out of 100,000 people, 1% are more worried about quality than price, and 99% are most worried about price and not quality, the logical business decision for them to make is to reduce quality so to keep the price low. Right? Wherein, if you are a person where quality is most important to you, you've just become an unimportant relationship to them. You should take your quality expectation to somebody who cares about it. And that's probably going to be somebody closer to you, somebody who's a smaller producer, whose differentiator is that they provide quality. And I think about the feed thing that happened with Tractor Supply. And it looks like the feed quality has impacted egg production in some chickens. And I don't see the conspiracy that was intentional to make egg prices go up. I think that they identified that keeping the price in the $16 a bag range was more important to their customers than the quality of the feed. So they made a choice to change something in the feed. And the end result was they pissed a lot of people off who figured out what was up, but they also, the people who were not affected by that had already decided quality was more important than price and had left that source, right? So it's just, all of that's just, it's a long way of saying I don't have to feed my sheep hay anymore, which was my point. This is what happens when Nicole's a little sick. She gets a little off tangenty. It's what you get. So anyway, the sheep aren't eating so much hay anymore. We have way too much hay. The other thing about the sheep is we have so we're running sheep on my 3.2 acres and the 16 acres next door, as well as some of the other properties around us that I don't know how many acres they are cumulatively, because people are like, how much land are you managing? I'm like, well, my 3.2 acres is pretty actively managed. The 16 acres for the sheep, and they're like, oh, that's a lot of land. And I'm like, you would be surprised how fast sheep can go through 16 acres. Just saying. But there was one part they hadn't gotten to because the acreage is like super steep uphill. And so the lower part has been grazed in a couple of instances more than one time. Because it was so overgrown when we started, it's hard to put in temporary fencing. And so the very tippy top of the hill, we're finally there with the sheep. There are 3 paddocks up there, and they are up there. They are finding a lot of good forage up there, and a lot, like if you look at that hillside, there is fresh green grass coming back in a way that I haven't seen on that pasture in a long time. So I really think like that first wave of ruminant coming through there has set the expectation or the foundation for the seed bank to do what it needs to do for the sheep. So we're just going to keep rotating them through there. The ducks are in full egg laying mode at this point. They had taken some time off to go through the molt, and then it was dark, and so they weren't laying very much. We are in spring. We are getting lots of eggs. I'm getting more eggs from the ducks than I can eat. So when they first started laying, it was like we waited a week to collect 4 eggs to have one meal here. And then next thing I know, I'm getting 2 eggs a day. So it's 2 days and a meal. And then I'm getting 4 eggs a day. So we're like on parity with the ducks. And now it's 7 eggs a day. And that's plenty. And that means that the Muscovies have not started laying yet. Yes, my duck flock is actually pretty low right now because I intended to reproduce them last year and they did not successfully raise babies. So hopefully this spring we'll get another round of ducks for them. If not, I'm going to be forced to buy ducks from somewhere. But I have a lot of positive thoughts about our ability to grow ducks. I have done it before. I did give away the incubator that AutoFab had given to me to somebody who really wants to raise her own chickens from her eggs. And if I incubate them, I will borrow an incubator or something for the 1 round because I decided it wasn't worth keeping the incubator on hand that I wasn't using. And there are other really motivated homesteaders in my area who really want to do that. And I was like, hey, if there's other homestead stuff you need, let me know because we're kind of going through this purge. I really wish I could go to Carrie's swap meet next weekend because I have like I'm looking outside. I have like fence chargers and all this other stuff that people might want, but it's, as I said, I'll be singing. Not only am I singing in the choir, but I'm on the board, and I can't even fathom preparing the stuff to have somebody else to take out, which has happened in the past. Like Eric used to do that for us. So I talked to Tactical. He said he's hesitant. So we're at the point where we're ready to bring girl and boy sheep back together. I'm not sure I'll separate them again in the future. I may just kind of let them go and let it happen. Maybe separate the one who is ready to give birth from everybody else to make sure that the baby lambs aren't damaged. And we don't know how the dogs will act during birthing times, but time to bring the whole flock back together. But Nighthawk is putting in a garden space that's in a new place, and we're going to run the girl sheep over that area pretty heavily to help him just bite back the weeds. It would actually be really nice to bring the pigs over there, but I think the pigs are leaving soon. So they're going to do that, and then we're going to put them back together. Tactical also mentioned that the baby lamb is small enough that she can get up into the dog's shelter where their food is. And we don't know how the dogs will react if a lamb is actually getting up in there, if they will be protective of the food or not. We don't want her to get hurt. So when it comes time to bring them back together, we're going to do one of two things. Tactical doesn't know this, so he's going to hear this for the first time when he hears this. We're either going to kind of separate the dogs out, but leave their shelter there and feed them somewhere else and make that shelter electric until she gets zapped a few times and then becomes afraid of the shelter. Or we're going to have to just watch it really carefully and see how they behave. I'm inclined to do the first thing, but it's more work, and Tactical is the lamb manager. And so he ends up having to execute most of the stuff with the lambs on a day-to-day basis. So it's ultimately his decision. That's how we make decisions here, guys, is we have different homestead projects, and we have at this point established who's the head, I don't know, the head person of Project Sheep or Project Chicken or whatever. And the other people give input, but the person who has to deal with it every day gets to make the decision. That's our simple way of doing that, because otherwise, if you have to always have consensus on everything around the homestead, it's very difficult to make decisions around the homestead. It's a huge waste of time not to just get moving. And neither one of those is wrong. Neither one of those is wrong. It's just different approaches, right? A lot of times it's different approaches. And thank you, Homestead Glamour Girl. I am up. I am feeling a little better. I'm not feeling great, but yesterday I thought I'd be able to record this after I drive home, and I was like, oh, nope, that's not happening. Thank you, Pack Rat, for coming on here and letting folks know who were hoping I was going to go live last night. We are also weaning rabbits today, and that's just, we had a door that was broken on the cage where we wanted to move the baby rabbits that aren't really babies anymore. One of those is getting processed. One of those is female and may get rebred. I don't know yet. And we have more baby rabbits to do right now. So we're kind of on a cycle with the rabbits. I'm probably going to bring in another doe from some other farm for stronger genetics, because I feel like we have, I think I have some issues with the robustness of my rabbits as regard, like the fact that I've lost baby rabbits a couple times to cold when it wasn't like super -20 extreme cold makes me think I've either got a mom who doesn't take care of her kits, and or they're just not robust enough to live on my homestead. And I've always been sort of more inclined to help the animals along. That's why I do most of the medical stuff with the animals, I don't know, medical is not the right description, but the intervention to help the sick ones or the hurt ones. That's my area of decision making, because I'm the one willing to do it. But I'm not like on this other extreme where if a chicken has scissor beak, I'm going to pile its food in a high pyramid every day so that it can eat it. Like, I won't let super weak ones go, but I will support animals through some hard times. And as we get further and further into the homestead journey here, I also am learning that I don't want to have a situation where I've set it up because I supported them that I always have to support them. So I'm really looking at, a combination of support animals through so that I can process them and get their genetics out of the pool because of the scale we're at, versus I supported them. I like them. And now I'm going to keep them. And that being said, we've got one going to the butcher on Monday who is a genetic cull who I really didn't want to have to cull because I really liked him, but he's got to go. So that's happening Monday. Also, I'll have lamb for sale. Anyway, next segment is grow. This is where we talk about what we're planting in the spring and onion. So I have onion bulbs that are going in now. I'm very good at green onions and Egyptian walking onions and those sorts of things. I've not been a really great, the big onion grower. My big onions end up being little onions. And I think it's because of how the soil is and the water and all of that. So this year I'm putting more attention towards the onions. They're going to go in this week. And I am preparing my potatoes for seed potatoes. So the potatoes I have stored already are starting to grow. The eyes are growing roots, basically. And what I'll do this week is cut them into pieces that are at least 1 inch by inch square that have at least an eye per one. And then I will let them sit for a week just to the air, open to the air. They'll, where it's cut will turn black like a potato does and toughen up a little bit. Then I put those in the ground around the 1st of March. Traditionally, they're going in the ground. And the reason I grow potatoes, I don't grow a lot of potatoes, but I grow some potatoes for me is because potatoes commercially grown soak up all of the toxins in the dirt they're grown in. And the commercially grown potatoes tend to be in areas where a lot of fertilizers and pesticides and other things have been put in that soil. And so to the degree that I can, I either source them from people who are growing them with regenerative practices, or I grow my own. And because we don't eat very many potatoes, I got like a 1/4 bushel last time out of the ground here, or a 1/2 bushel or something. I bought a 1/2 bushel from a farmer. We didn't go through all the potatoes. So we don't go through that many potatoes a year. It's like mashed potatoes at Thanksgiving and maybe at Christmas. This year it didn't happen at Christmas. And then when Mama Sauce visits, she has more potatoes. So I got plenty to put in the ground. I could put them all up in my food forest if I wanted to. I might do that for fun. We'll see. The nice thing about a potato bush is that it's shading the ground and not letting other weeds grow. And then it kind of breaks up the ground. I don't know that my food forest needs much more ground breaking up, but we'll see. We'll see. So that's happening. And then I'm starting more seedlings. So all of the seedlings are starting. It's about time to start tomatoes for me. I want to transplant them in May. So I want about 8 weeks, and that means March 1st. And I may put them out in April. We'll see. It depends on how fast they go. I usually germinate tomato seeds in about 3 days with my system, which is a lot faster than other people. Peppers take me 10 days. So we'll bring that all together. Seedlings happen on the schedule they happen on based on how much time I make for it. And I've been pretty slow at getting them started this year. I also know one time I started tomatoes in May and still had a lot of tomatoes that year. So just because you missed this window doesn't mean you missed the only window. I am starting the tomatoes with aspirin to help them develop the ability or the immune response to better fight blight. And this year I'm putting garden soil in with the potting soil I use to start them, under the hopes that they will be more symbiotic with the mycorrhizal and bacteria network that we already have up there in the garden. Next segment is holler neighbors and community. This is where we talk about, the immediate holler neighbor community, how we're working together, as well as the wider LFTN community. Why would this be on a homestead day? Because here's the thing about homesteading. You can do it by yourself, but if you do it by yourself, you have a much harder time than if you tap into the network around you of other homesteaders who would love to help you. And the other thing is, some of our homesteads are better at growing sheep, and some of our homesteads are better at growing lettuce. And it just all depends on what your land is suited to. And I knew this before I ever went. So I did dumb homesteading for like a decade, and then I figured out how to be smart about it. I call that smart homesteading. It involves using permaculture practices. But when I was doing dumb homesteading, I was like, man, I'm really good at growing garlic, peppers, chickens, and other livestock here. And if I ever really need a lot of vegetables, I need to find somebody whose land is better at vegetables. My land is not great at it. And the reason is that it's just harder to grow on a slope. You have to do all sorts of things to make it easier to cultivate those things. Other people have flatter, richer land. And, over the years, my soil has gotten better and better and better, but it was an uphill battle when I started here. And it's really well suited to growing sheep and goats specifically. And it's really good for ducks. It's great for ducks. And I wouldn't have known that until I started trying different things. Now, other people can look at land like mine and be like, this is what it's good at. But I had to go through the hard work of trying and failing a bunch of stuff before I could do it. So I made friends with somebody whose land is really well suited for vegetables and just was like, if you have extra, I'll can it. I'll give you half when it's canned. And it's sort of a win-win, or we can trade for some of my meat that I grow here. And that has endured to this day as something that I do. So that's just something to keep in mind. And that's why we talk about community so much as part of this. Is without community, we are not strong. We think we're strong until we sprain an ankle or need more dried comfrey than we put up because our dog got hurt really bad or whatever it is. But when you have community, you will get the calendula and the comfrey that you need for that situation. So the Great Chicken Coop building project is about to begin. Last night, Tactical and Steve and Tracy, our neighbors, all went to Lowe's. I think they were there for like 3 or 4 hours. They were there for a long time. I was already home when they left. I was asleep when they came back, and they got all of the lumber to make a badass chicken coop. If you've paid attention to this show at all, you've already seen the plans for it. And the reason we're doing that is it's a model of how you can run chickens. So when you come to my spring workshop at the end of April, you can see how this coop is set up. Steve wrote up plans for how this coop is set up. He shared them openly, and it's set up to be able to run chickens in one place one year and another place another year, so that you use the chickens to prepare your planting space and to process your kitchen waste, your compost, so you don't have to mess with it. So the idea there being, how easy can I make that? The byproduct is eggs and meat based on the breed of chicken I have chosen, and compost. And then we plant in the compost. And what I plan to grow in the compost at this time, and this could change because I change my mind as I do things, what I'm planning to grow in the compost is crops that will feed my livestock mostly, and less about will feed me. And part of that is because the volume of the plants that I need to grow and put up here for this immediate community is a lot different now than it was a decade ago, because a lot of us have become more ketovore, which is like herbivore plus keto. But most of the vegetables we eat are in season and fresh, and they're green. So you're talking like Swiss chard, spinach, green beans. I do beets and carrots. I do those things. I don't do a lot of those. Tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, like a lot of that sort of thing. My philosophy in eating, it may not be like 100% Dr. Kim Berry approved choices. I think whole foods are the most important thing. I've cut out grains from my personal diet. That has worked for me very well. Probably made this soy reaction stronger than ever, though, because I've really detoxed a lot and my body is not used to the grains at all. And it's that by nature of what we do, what that means is that I don't need to grow as much of the kinds of crops that take up a lot of space, like potatoes and oats and wheat and those sorts of things. It's just a lot less. Like, I eat fruit in season. I've got a bunch of fruit trees out here. This year I won't get any fruit off them. It's their first year here. If they have fruit on them, I'm like literally going to pick it off before it has a chance to grow, because I want good root development this year. So that coop build is starting now, and Steve's doing most of the work. I am going to try to get him set up with some filming to film the process. I was originally like, hey, let's do it in a weekend. Let's get people out here. Let's do a workshop, because I'm always like, let's teach people how to do it. He was like, so this is one of those situations, Nicole, where it will take me longer if people are helping me and I just want to get it done. I was like, fair. There are things he can delegate out. If he delegates them out, they'll get it done. Also community related and repair related is the Great Kitchen Repair Project of 2023 is starting this week, which is not frightening at all. 4 weeks out from Self-Reliance Festival and 8 weeks out from my spring workshop, right? terrifying. We're ripping up my whole kitchen. I usually cook food partially out of there and out of the outdoor kitchen for the spring workshop. Don't worry, I have a backup plan if we run into big problems. But what I did going into this was look at the scope of the project, tap into community knowledge to have people come look at it and say, how bad do you think it'll be? And the answer is we don't really know till we know, but here are some parameters of what we think based on what we see. And then I looked at who has the skills and the time on the schedule I'm on to help with demolition and reassembly of the kitchen. And the problem I'm fixing, there are two problems I'm fixing. The first problem is that my floor is not level out there. Is it because of settling? I don't know. Was it built that way? I don't know. We're going to find out. I know that last time we pulled up a subfloor piece in that area, there was in fact a joist that needed to be replaced. So I am prepared to replace all the joists. I am hoping that I don't have a bigger problem related to my exterior cinder block walls settling that has to be somehow dealt with, because if that happens, it's a much bigger scope of thing. So that starts, what we're doing is taking everything out of the kitchen. I will be cooking, I don't know, on the griddle outside and in crock pots and down in Tactical's cabin if I cook. Oh, and in a microwave. I know. She uses a microwave. I don't really use a microwave very often, but there is one here in another room. It's a reheating tool. But we are going to rip it all out, fix whatever we find, put it back together, put vinyl down on the floor, which is not my first choice of a flooring material, but the budget of the project made me decide vinyl is a really good idea. And if I ever want to tile over that, I can. Put in the cabinets back. I'm going to use the same cabinets, but they will be level now, which will be super exciting. And then I'm replacing the countertops and moving the sink and the dishwasher and building an island. The other problem I'm solving with this project is that my drains don't drain right on that part of the house because of how they were installed. So we are redoing the drains while everything's open. So yeah, I'm about to have a new house if this keeps up. Well, yes. How this started was that I was like, let's just redo the counters because my counters are just wrecked. They are wrecked. They're hard to use. They're hard to keep clean because they're not like they are what happens to Formica if you buy it from Lowe's. So don't buy your Formica counters from Lowe's. But they're all like messed up. And I thought, well, we'll just flip out some counters, leave everything where it is, hope the drains drain during the workshop. And 5 years from now, I'll do the real part of this, which is ripping up the floor and figuring out what's going on. But I really need the counters to function for my staff at the spring workshop. And it's gotten even worse from last year. So I priced that out. And then I started pricing out what it would take to just rip up the floor. And the answer is it's more expensive to do the whole thing the right way. But it's not that much more expensive. And so by the time I'm putting money into the countertop redo and the other pieces of that, I might as well just spend the extra now and get it done all the way the right way than wait. And so I decided to do that. Fat Tuesday was fun. So last Tuesday was Fat Tuesday. That's crepe day in the holler. And all the neighbors came over and we had crepes. We wrapped it up early because I was heading the next steps at the crack of dawn the next day. So that was a really good time just hanging out. Everybody brought something to add to the pot of stuff that we put in crepes. We do savory crepes. We do sweet crepes. I went to the store to get actually buy groceries for this, and there weren't groceries to buy. By which I mean there were tons of groceries at the store, but not of the things I wanted for crepes. Like the produce looked terrible. The fruit looked terrible. And I was like, I'm not buying decrepit looking blueberries for this or whatever. So we didn't have what we usually have. It is how the grocery system worked. I haven't been really grocery shopping in quite a while on the regular. Like I will go into a grocery store and get the thing I need, whether it's Dawn dish soap or something, but I don't really, what has happened in a decade and a half of homesteading and with purposeful focus put towards sourcing as many things from my region as possible or from our network as possible, is that I rarely need to buy anything at the grocery store that's an actual edible grocery. And if I do, it's going to be something like I have decided to have ice cream and I'm not going to make it myself. So I buy a pint of ice cream, or sometimes I buy cheese at the commercial grocery store. And I did that because I ran out of homemade cheese. Well, I have a little bit left, but I'm running out of homemade cheese right now. And so things like that might get purchased at the grocery store. So it's really some specialty weird processed item I shouldn't be eating, basically, is what I'll get at the store. Or there's a specific kind of cured meat I want that's at the grocery store. Other than that, I don't buy things at the grocery store. And it's led to some interesting conversations because people are like, you need to check out this grocery thing and that grocery thing. It's all natural, organic, local. I'm like, yeah, but I'm buying directly from the farms. So I don't need the lettuce. I don't need the greens. I don't need the microgreens. The things I will buy are cheese and some cured meats, spices, salt, pepper. So you see, it's kind of like sugar if I'm going to cook with sugar. I don't even use oils anymore, really. So going into a grocery store is an eye-opening thing for me because I'm like, whoa, I used to come here every week with a list and do all this stuff. And I remember what that was like. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. That's like doing that is better than just eating out all the time, right? And buying whole foods at the store is better than buying processed foods at the store. But it's so funny because when I go in there trying to get whole foods like I used to, I'm like, wow, these look so much different than what I source in season at a farm. And it's just like my whole perspective has changed. And I remember reading, I can't remember whose book it was, but she was talking about she had been living off her homestead so long and eating seasonally most of the time that it became mind blowing that you could get raspberries in December because raspberries don't grow in December. So you can get frozen ones, but fresh raspberry, it's like kind of an amazing thing that you can get all of this stuff fresh when it's totally out of season. That's only possible by shipping it, of course, but it's also an amazing modern accomplishment if you think about it. So unfortunately, that accomplishment was not very high quality last week for whatever reason. There was, in the berry department, there was a whole big empty refrigerated area with one package of strawberries that were mostly white. And not because they were white strawberries, but because they weren't ripe yet. And I'm like, those are going to taste like ass. I'm not buying those strawberries. I'm already picky about strawberries. And I'm like, those are going to be sour. We have to add sugar. And then it's just going to taste like sweet fruit mush. It's not even going to have strawberry flavor at that point because they didn't let them stay on the vine long enough. But there you go. There was a Lowe's drug deal situation yesterday. And this is how the wider network works. So Steve and Tactical were going to Lowe's. Tracy was coming with them. And it was made aware to the network that they were going to be in Cookeville, Tennessee. You know what that means? That means that somebody else in Tennessee who knows us and wanted to buy some four-wheeler parts from Tactical's like, hey, man, mind if we meet in the parking lot? I'll give you cash. So we have these what I call homesteader drug deals. And sometimes it's like, here's some eggs. Here's some money. Sometimes it's like, I got seeds. And you're like, I got plants. So so that totally happened last night. And there was a lot of discussion about he might actually buy my pigs and a whole bunch of other things that might happen. But they did a great exchange because the one person has a four-wheeler that needs a motor and Tactical has a four-wheeler that he's partsing out and it had a motor. So they were able to do a whole bunch of cool stuff in the parking lot of Lowe's. So don't underestimate the power of your homesteader drug deal. Make use of those. Pay attention to who's going where in the network and you can actually tap into some great value because buying a new motor is more expensive than one from somebody who already has one, for example. So, yeah. Next up, we have infrastructure. This is where we talk about what we're building on the homestead. First up is the mobile sheep shelter is back in progress. Tactical is building a new mobile sheep shelter for the sheep that are on the 16-acre plot. The challenge has been how the terrain is. Other farmers just let their sheep get rained on, but we're nicer than that. We have a shelter. They've had rain tarps a lot, but this is one on skids. It's a lot like the dog shelter that is like on skids too, can be pulled around. It has to be durable enough to like go over the ground and up steep hills, light enough to go up steep hills, but not so light that the sheep completely break it, because they will hit things with their heads, especially when they're feeling playful. Other than that, we are well into the workshop repair project. I have a workshop building on my property that those of you who've been to events here, if you were at my second spring workshop, we had the spring workshop in it. And even then, there was like all around the edges, just full of stuff I didn't even know what it was. So a lot of focus starting in January has been to get things out of there that are not being used and either sell them or scrap them or whatever. I had some B-52 bomber, I think it's B-52 bomber oxygen tanks I tried to sell. Nobody bought them. And I'm like, well, just get rid of them then. If I can't get money for them, I'm not going to keep them around under the hopes I can get money for them. Those kinds of hopes and dreams do not help me. That just puts the oxygen tanks in my way, and I'm not using them to be compressors. So they can go. In fact, one of them is converted into a compressor, I believe, with a like a part from a car or something. So lots of really cool steampunk sort of stuff coming out of there. I'm not that kind of tinkerer, and if it's there, I can't put the things in there I want to put in. And then there's a whole bunch of I don't know what in there. So the I don't know what is being purged, and as a result of this, more and more rats are being found, which is horrifying but gratifying at the same time, because Tactical's Dogs is a pretty good rat killer, and she gets pretty excited about the whole purging of the rats project. The fewer places there are for rats to hang out, the fewer rats you have. So we're working on that problem from many angles of like, what are they eating? Where are they getting what they're eating? Let's not have something they can eat. How can we get bait into those things so they die? How can we trap them? How can we have them killed by cats and dogs or whatever? So that's been a big old push. And I am convinced at this point that what happened is Tigger turned 15 this year and stopped killing as many rodents as he used to kill. And then they just exploded in population. And then it was just a really good year for rats and mice. So what's happening now is we've gotten so much stuff out of there that we can take the storage units off the side, which had a gap where rats could be, and deal with that. And then look at the state of the exterior structural support beams, basically. I don't know what you call them, studs. Those things, some of them are termite infested and needing to be replaced. So we're replacing those things. Thanks for that note, Pack Rat. I'm happy to be sitting up today. Replacing those, making sure it's structurally sound, and then we're going to enclose it a lot better than it's been enclosed from a rodent standpoint, and have it put together in a way that works for one part of it's going to become a wood shop, and the other part will be, I think, my storage area or project area. We haven't really worked that out. There's a wood stove down there that heats it. I'm going to make it so the doors close better, because the doors are just sort of open to the air in some places. All of that's happening to make that a much more functional space. And I'm excited to see that come together, because then some of the things that are stored up in front of my house under Taj Mahal can finally go down there. The roof is going to have to be replaced. Like, there's all sorts of stuff happening related to that project. So that's all of the infrastructure we're working on. We are about 100 feet shy of my perimeter fence being done. So I'm hoping that will creep up into the priority plan this spring, but we'll see. With the kitchen being ripped out, I don't know. That's a lot of work. And I don't want to pretend that we can do more than is already on the docket right now. Our final segment of today's show is finances. This is where we just talk about the money side of the homestead. I had a lamb for sale who would have made a great ram for somebody's flock, and people wanted to give me $100 for him. I can sell him processed for $425. And so I did make the decision that he is going to go to the processing plant and be made into some ground lamb. And that was actually kind of emotionally difficult for me, because I have a friendship with this particular lamb. But on the homestead, that's the decision that makes sense. So if somebody had come up with $250 or $300, I totally would have sold him for that. And that is a reasonable price for a ram of this caliber. He's also not quite a year old yet. So he's a good age for processing. I had to make that decision. So he's going to freezer camp Monday. And if anybody wants some lamb, let me know. Nicole at livingfreeintennessee.com. We have very full freezers right now. I'm going to have him made into more ground than I have the other ones, just because I realized that I did not get enough ground. And I've heard feedback from folks who bought half a lamb. They wish they would have had more ground. So we're going to just have more ground on hand. We'll just do that more in the butchering moving forward. And I am outsourcing it to a processor because time. It's totally worth the money to pay the processor to do it. I also made a decision to take a capital loss this year. Now, this may not be relevant to you, but it may be. I bought land in Colorado with my sister many years ago, and real estate was peaking at that time. It's a very rural lot, but it's in an HOA, and I knew that going in and had read all the HOA rules. I was fine with it. It was more of a vacation investment. The original intent was to build a home on it and to go there for family vacations. And we bought it, and then the 2008 crash happened, and it went from something I had put quite a bit of money into to something that was like, I would have had a hard time selling this lot for $8,000 in 2009. We'll just put it that way. It was basically worthless. And so we talked about, like, because you have the sunken cost fallacy. Hey, I have X in it. I can't sell it till I have that much again. That's not necessarily the best financial decision to make. But we were like, property taxes are not that high on this because it's not worth very much money. So we'll just sit on it and see what happens. And worst case scenario, in 20 years, we'll just sell it if we decide we need to sell it, So that's what we did. And over the years, it has come back in value quite a bit. It's within $30,000 of the original price. So it's not worth, hundreds of thousands of dollars, but it's come back quite a bit. And this year I was visiting my sister, and I'm like, hey, I wonder what that lot's worth. Like, let's look at that. Do you want to sell it? And she's like, well, if we can get X amount for it, I feel like even though that's a loss, I'd be happy with that. And I said, that's my number too. And so then we reached out to a real estate agent, and the agent said, well, you might be able to get that much for it. This is your comparables in the area. But things are staying on the market for like 6, 8, 9 months. And we're like, okay, well, we'll list it. Our bottom line is X. And if nobody buys it, then it's like no skin off our nose, right? We just listed it and whatever. Well, we listed it higher than the comps, and we got an offer the same day it listed. Cash closing. And we negotiated back and forth to a price that's above our bottom number. And I'm still taking a capital loss on this. So it's $30,000 less than my sister and I bought it for. And she's like, I almost feel like maybe we should have waited and waited till it came back further in value. I'm like, well, we don't know that it would, first of all. The buyer has a very specific reason they want this specific one. So we kind of lucked out. And I think that we are at the top of the price we can get in this market for that. So I think we're doing really well for what we have. And then I look at how I bought this lot. The way I bought this lot was with equity from a house I had in Portland, Oregon that tripled in value when I bought it. And that tripling in value is an unusual, weird, flukish thing. That's not normal for the history of real estate, that it would just do that in a couple of years. And so I consider that equity jump on that house to be fictional money in a lot of ways. Like, it was just luck. And so, I put that money in it. When I lost it, I was like, okay, well, it was kind of fictional money anyway, because there was this real estate bubble that was trumped up by policymakers and blah, blah, blah. And then we bounced back on that. So I'm technically taking a capital loss on that. But if I think about it, I also bought it with fake money in a lot of ways. So I'm coming out ahead this year. It will have a tax implication for me that if I make a good profit in my business, that capital loss counts against it. So for me, I think it's going to work out in a positive way to also have that as a capital loss on my taxes. And the most important reason I made this decision is it frees up liquid money for me to do something with that is more important for my long-term financial goals anyway. And so basically I'm in the middle of spreadsheet. I'm pretty sure I know where it's going. I'm in the middle of spreadsheet land going, okay, if I put it here, what does that do? If I put it there, what does it do? If I put it these two places, what does it do? Because it brings in a decent amount of money to help me offset things that are costing me money that adding money to can stop costing me money, basically. So, I could put it aside and invest it, for example. But where it's actually going is some stop the bleeding sorts of situations. And for me, that's a huge blessing. And that's why when my sister was like, oh, are you sure we shouldn't have waited? I was like, nope. And then she had a huge thing happen in her life that wiped out their savings. She's like, well, now I'm really glad because with this coming in, and it's like, we're not getting capital gains tax on it, guys, because it didn't go up in value, right? So it's not even like, hey, you shouldn't sell this investment property. It's like, you just lost money on an investment property. You're not paying taxes on that. So for her, it actually refills her emergency fund. And that's a huge blessing for her too. So I'm just sharing that story with you because I think sometimes decisions like this that are big, and you do an investment and you're in a relationship with somebody and then they go horribly south, which this one did go horribly south for a long time, can break up those relationships. But it can also be a good thing in the long run if you make the right decisions. And I was confident based on long-term outlook for our country, this was 14 years ago when we bought the lot, that even though it had dropped in value a lot based on the demographic of our country and what people who are retiring tend to do, which is go to more recreational areas, and the fact that it was in a recreational area, I had my best educated guess was that real estate was going to go back up in that area, maybe not to the heights it had been at, but enough that I wasn't going to have, spend a couple $100 a year on property taxes and then be really pissed because it was worth $1,000 now instead of $8,000, right? And that turned out to be the case. I could have been wrong though. So I'm sharing everything I thought about with y'all because I think we don't share enough with our children, with those around us, why we make some of the financial decisions we make, right or wrong. If you share the why, and then you say this was right because in hindsight, or this is wrong because, we can all become more financially literate and learn why we are making the decision and how it is, so me selling at a loss should sound like a bad thing, right? No, it's a good thing. It's a great thing for me right now for cash flow. The loss, I think, is going to help me with tax implications this year. And the money I bought it to begin with was as if I'd bought Bitcoin and Bitcoin went from $400 to $20,000, right? It's like that increase is it's neat. It's awesome. It would make me, if I had like 20 Bitcoins when that happened, I would have been pretty stoked, right? But in a lot of ways, like, it's not like I worked 497,000 hours to earn that money. It was like I made a really good decision once that I was on accident and it worked. So I don't know. So yeah, I have a frowny face about losing money on that lot. I probably lost more than the value because I paid property taxes on it to begin with. Anyway, I don't consider it a bad thing at all. I learned a lot about investing in real estate from it. And I also think if it had been the worst decision and I had lost all my money, I also learned a lot about investing in real estate. So it was just sort of an expensive lesson in that case. But in this case, I've figured out how to flip it into something that brings me some benefit in spite of the fact there is loss from the original day I bought it to the day I sold it. And that's how you have to think about it, I think. It's how you have to think about any investment you make. And we are not taught to do that. I'm still learning how to do that, right? So I'll share other stories like this as we go. Anyway, for those of you who ask questions in the live stream, I will stay on and answer them. But I'm going to wrap up the show, guys. If you like the show and want to support the work I'm doing, you can do it in two ways. One, get your coffee at hollyroast.com. Two, consider becoming a member. Head on over to Living Free in Tennessee to find out more about that. With that, guys, go out, make it a great week. Okay, cool. Tori says, I appreciate the share on the financial decisions. I've seen too much bro marketing with you need to do this and not enough, but okay, why? Yeah. Yeah, that's, why is super important for me. And I can't remember what I was thinking about this morning. Oh yeah. Okay. So it was like the polluted Ohio River situation with the train derailment. I was thinking about people really worried about the water supply here getting polluted by that because the Ohio River is connects to the Mississippi River, and it connects to the Cumberland River. The Cumberland River connects to the Caney Fork River. The Caney Fork River is my river. But the Caney Fork River flows into the Columbia, not Columbia. I'm like, somehow my brain just went to Cumberland. I just went to Oregon in my head for a second. So Caney Fork goes into the Cumberland, which goes into the Ohio River, which means if it's flowing down the Ohio River, it could backfill a little bit up into the Cumberland, but how far will it go? Water flows downhill. And I haven't looked at where every river goes to and from, but that's how I understand it works. And so I'm not super worried about getting vinyl chloride in my water right now. I also looked up if Berkey filters filter that out, and they do, which is really interesting. But so I feel for the people who are in the area where that happened, and I feel for the people who are downstream from that. I also know that the way you deal with a chemical spill is to dilute it with water. And the further down river that goes, the less concentrated it is. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing because it's going to have less of an impact the more diluted it gets. I wish they would be releasing information on that a little bit better, because what I'm seeing is a lot of conspiracies on all sides and lots of quote unquote facts put out there. And then I start asking people who actually work in chemical spill cleanups, like, what would you have done in this situation and why? And, they all have slightly different answers, or they'll say, I don't know really, because I haven't looked at all the facts of that. And it makes me realize something. I'm going to do a show on crisis communications, but one of the things in crisis communications that if you ever have to respond to something is important to note is never guess what the answer to a question is, because you might be wrong. And then if you are the source of a problem as a person or as a company, and then you guess an answer because you don't want to look stupid when somebody asks you a question you don't know the answer to, and you're wrong, now it looks like you're trying to hide the truth. Okay. So the first rule I was ever taught in crisis communications is never guess the answer. And then when you say something, make sure it's true, and then proactively share what is true or what the facts are. If you don't do those three things, when a crisis happens, and that third one about sharing facts is pretty important. When a crisis happens, people start making up conspiracy theories because you're not giving them any information. So just not saying anything for a little while totally makes sense, but you better be finding out some information and sharing it. And I think in this situation, what I didn't see shared is, these are the chemicals. These are how many chemicals. These are the options we consider before we lit them on fire. This is why we lit them on fire. This is what happens when you light it on fire. This is how we made the decision about where to evacuate. This is how we made the decision about how long before letting people back in. None of that was communicated that I saw. This is the longer term environmental impact, or we cannot assess that, but this is how we're evaluating it. Like, all of those things didn't happen. And the bigger question is, why didn't that happen? Because we have a whole bunch of people afraid who don't have facts, that if they get the facts, it may make a very different, a different story for them and different decisions. If I think if I lived near where that happened, I would have left, and I would probably still not be back. But knowing that I'm upriver from it makes me less scared of the water pollution part of it. Looking at where the wind blew, it doesn't look like it went over us here. Other things have gone over us here, though. But I think maybe the real fear there, guys, is that people are afraid of what could happen in their area, having seen this happen in the US, right? And that's legitimate. I can understand feeling that fear. But what are you going to do about it? Now that you know that can happen, what changes are you making in your life? What's a reasonable reaction to that? And can you make that out of a proactive mindset versus a fear mindset? Because if you make it out of a fear mindset, you might do stupid, like weird things like get duct tape for your windows or something, rather than realizing if this happens in my area, I need to be prepared to leave. Okay. Am I prepared to leave? No. How do I need to be prepared to leave in a reasonable way? What does that look like? What am I taking with me? Where am I going? How am I getting there? How am I making money after I've left my job or whatever it is? There's lots of things to think about, all of which are free. Thinking about that stuff is all free. Putting some time into having a good bug out plan and a way to quickly grab documentation you need to get out of somewhere and to have a way to move your animals and family and all of that. Having that plan is free. And there are a million things that can happen. But like a plan for that is the same plan for if a forest fire comes through. It's the same plan for if a tornado's going to come, if a hurricane's coming to your area. It's like that covers a lot of possible problems. And so if that's the one thing in your sort of self-reliance or your resilience plan that you haven't thought about, this is a good wake-up call to think about it. That is what it is. Okay. Let's go back to, I need to stop saying that is what it is, because I'm just saying that because I don't know what to say right then. Okay, Tori says, any suggestions for making watering ducts easier in freezing temperatures? My plastic bin just cracked, and we hand haul hot water out when the watering tub is iced over. Use metal. Use metal watering cans. I used metal dog food containers for my poultry in the winter because they don't crack, and I can just dump it out and the ice cube comes out that is formed. And I'm assuming you mean for storage and not for carrying, because you just leave your carrying vessel where it's not frozen if that's an issue. Otherwise it will freeze. So that works. What works even better if you have access to electricity is to put a dog water heater under that metal dish and plug it in. If that doesn't work, what you're going to have to do is depends on how cold it is, 2 to 4 hour cycle, you're dumping that. But having a container that's not plastic, I think makes a big difference. If I was going to use plastic, I would look at the cement mixing trays from Lowe's or Home Depot, which are just made to be abused a little bit more. And if you have like a tub or something that could crack when the ice comes, rather than, and I made this mistake with a tub and I ruined it this year, rather than let the ice just freeze in that, put empty gallon, but with the lids on them, jugs, milk jugs or wood, so that the ice, it'll push either out on the hard to break metal or in on the easy to squish milk cartons. You'd rather have the second thing. So put something that can get destroyed in there, and you're less likely to crack the bathtub you use to water your goats, which I totally did this year because I forgot that I was supposed to put those things in there. So those are my thoughts about that. Other than that, I mean, you can go like crazy and have anti-freeze systems, and knowing where you live, Tori, I might think about doing that with some heat tape and electricity and that sort of thing. But really, you can do it with metal. I think it makes a huge difference. So let's see. Justin Rhodes placed the pipe that ran water continuously with cutout. Yeah. So that's the other thing you can do is heat, or you can put a heat in there. So that's another way you can do it. Justin Rhodes also had his birds have access to a hoop house, greenhouse, which is a little bit warmer. You can put the water in there. Electricity and water scare me. A dog water dish heating device is designed to get wet. I have a stock tank heater in my pond outside. It's designed to be underwater. I also have that on a GFCI. It'll trip if it does anything weird. So I don't know what to tell you about that, Tori. Get over your fear and learn about electricity and water, and it might not be as scary anymore. It's kind of like learning about digital currency and Bitcoin when you're afraid of the CBDC. Learn about it and then decide, how does it work and what do I need to be scared of? And what can I do to get around the thing that scares me? What state is John Bush in? He lives in Texas. John Bush lives in Texas. Also, Tori had to have her call out for the show. So now she's like, hey, hey. Oh, no, she's talking to Hey Hey. Anybody raise geese for meat? I do not, but that is on our list of possibilities here. I don't know if it will happen. Right now, we added sheep. We're actually almost a year into the sheep, which means we get to add another something if we want to. And I can't remember what Tactical was talking about adding. I'm like, wait a minute. We just added something. He's like, well, it's almost been a year. I'm like, maybe we should let it mellow for a second year. We'll see. Because I feel like things are just starting to get under control again around here. We're not constantly chasing the next paddock for the sheep. So maybe it'd be nice to just have like even keel for a bit. But geese are interesting to me. If we do another like round of ducks, we may mix some geese with the ducks and see how that goes. The cool thing I've heard about geese is that they're really great foragers, just like the Muscovy ducks are. And foragers don't require a lot of outside feed, if any. And, you know, that's how that works. What will be the price of your Grand Lamb? I don't know. I have to look at the spreadsheet on that one, and we can talk offline about it. But I usually sell like the half lamb or the quarter lamb. So we'll just hit me up via email, Homestead Glamour Girl. We'll talk more about what that looks like. I should have it back. It's going Monday. I should have it back before Self-Reliance Festival, where I know you're going. So, because they have to hang it and then process it, or like, you know what I'm saying? Like they age the meat before they run it through the big old grinder. So that's going to be fun. And I have to say, like, I know how to process animals, but it's kind of a relief to be able to outsource that right now because of the schedule I put forth for myself this spring. I may be backing off a little bit on some of my travel, guys, after this latest experience. Speaking of which, I'm going to have to wrap up the show soon. Don't ask me why. Anyway, thanks for joining me on this Saturday. We'll get the audio podcast out. I will see you next time. And if you have not signed up for the My Three Things webinar, that's tomorrow at 6 p.m. I'm just going through in about an hour and a half how to do the My Three Things method. I'm supposed to upsell you on something. I don't have anything to upsell you on, so I'm probably not gonna, but hopefully you'll join my email list. But we're going to go through that method. I am 90% of the way through finishing the writing of the book, but that doesn't mean it's going to produce real soon because I may rewrite it 4 or 5 more times. But this year I've just felt really called to hit My Three Things hard because it has helped me so much. I'm watching it help people. I'm learning from you as you share your vision statements and your difficulty in differentiating between vision and purpose and your BHAGs and all of that. So those of you who are doing that on social, thanks. I'm reading those and I'm like, okay, I might need to clarify that a little bit better in the book. It's very helpful for me to see you implement it in your life. And I'm super excited when it works for you. So anyway, we will see you next time. If you have not signed up for that webinar, livingfreeintennessee.com has a link for you. Cheers.